What was the weirdest thing the weird kid did at school? Every lunch he would put a baguette in his sleeve and secretly eat it. In high school, this kid would regularly pick his nose and eat it in class. He was also caught masturbating to girls in the school library and on a school bus. He got suspended for a week and had to register as a 6 offender. Edit, update. He was 17. Is no longer registered as a 6 offender, and was able to go to college. At my middle school, someone decided to get a little attention with a good old-fashioned bomb threat. Except they thought that a bomb threat meant literally writing, bomb threat, somewhere. Worse yet, they misspelled the frock out of it, and wrote, boom threat. So we had to go on a brief, very awkward lockdown while the police checked the perimeter for booms. The weird kid at my high school tied a string around his pencil case and pulled out around the halls pretending it was a dog. He still lives in my hometown. I think unemployed. Oh, also weird girl in middle school acted like a cat. She would meow and hiss at people, lick the water fountain and rub her body on the teacher's legs. In 8th grade. I have no idea where she ended up. Well, there was Frog Boy. All he did was run around the woods catching lizards, frogs, raising tadpoles in a bucket, that kinda stuff. He had ADD before ADD was a thing, so he was labeled active, and our teacher would sometimes just let him run out of the classroom to do a couple laps. He was just crazy energetic, but all smiles. He superglued the woodshop tools to the wall, and he covered the school kitchen with flour, that kind of stuff. He went on to be a professional motocross rider. He heard that you'd automatically get suspended if you peed your pants at school. He wanted to find out if it was true. Peed his pants. Got suspended. Had a kid nicknamed Cheeseburger. In the grade ahead of me in high school, he got his nickname because when it was time for his class to go to lunch, he snuck into the roof and crawled his way into the cafeteria, dropped down and proceeded to steal all the cheeseburger put out for lunch. Unfortunately, they caught him in the act and sent him to the principal's office. A year later, he was caught stealing a teacher's computer, and in the process of being arrested he bit the officer's hand, getting him sent to juvie never to be heard of again. We had a guy who wore a dragon tail, believing he was a dragon, and same story for a different guy, but his thing was wearing a cat bell. There were lots of rumors about the cat bell guy. He would say very obscure elements on the periodic table and start singing about it as if it were his friend. We were like 7/8. His locker only ever had 3 things in it: his American flag cape, one of those foldable razor scooters, and a box turtle. Showing us a video he uploaded to YouTube of him cutting his poop in half with a hanger as it was laying in the toilet bowl. Edit. Everyone asking for the video link. I am sorry. I don't have the link and I'm too afraid to even attempt to find it on YouTube. Thinking about searching turd cutting in toilet bowl on YT seems dangerous. Jumping on the giant Christmas tree from the 2nd floor balcony. That was the last time they put a Christmas tree on our school. He got mad that he didn't understand how to play a game at lunchtime, so he started hitting and punching the nearest person to him, who happened to be me. When I shoved him away and asked him what the hell was he doing, he whipped his dig out, charged at me, and when I shoved him away from me again he started crying and ran away with his member still sticking out. In 1st grade there was this kid who stood by the sink in the back of the classroom eating bits of those brown paper towels. The teacher was constantly telling him to stop eating them and go back to his seat. Least weird thing was she would blow her nose then eat it. Bigger weird things were running head first into a wall shouting that she's stupid if she didn't get the score she wanted. Another time running down the school field with teachers chasing while shouting, "I'm a ghost." Also announced she was pregnant because her boyfriend, who I don't know if was real, ejaculated. Her words, on her knee. We always thought she had something going on and would tell the teachers something needed doing, but apparently they'd talk to the parents who refused tests. It was actually kind of sad and people generally just felt a bit sorry for her. Had the weird kid in high school asked the teacher to use the bathroom. She said no and this dude legit stabbed his hand with a pencil. Went all the way through then asked if he could now sit. Was wild. Edited. Also to add to this. This was Pearl High School in Mississippi. This was the school Luke Woodham shot and killed his girlfriend and her friend at the school. This kid stabbed himself with the pencil about 2 months after that happened. This was late 1997. A guy the first knew in high school had a mouse living in his car. Not a pet mouse or anything. Just a wild mouse. He would intentionally leave food in the backseat for it. I almost didn't believe it until I saw the thing run under the seat when he opened the door. He also wore this full cow suit to school one time, which freaked an autistic kid who had a specific fear of cows. There was a lot of debate if he wore it to freak the kid out or if he wore it just to be weird. He's a youth pastor now. She wrote a list of all the girls and boys she wanted to kiss and murder and then casually passed it out on the playground. A wild kid activated a fire hose and started blasting everyone that came his way. Students, teachers, didn't matter. Weird kid in elementary was a self-proclaimed alien. Once, while waiting for the bus, she told me, "On my planet we eat people like you," and proceeded to bite me. We later became friends in high school and she used to give me massages during lunch break in the quad. Just realized now she was likely tenderizing me. Lol, had this weird kid in my class who was otherwise okay but just would do really unexplainable stuff. He once opened his lunchbox in class and threw the contents right onto the overhead ceiling fan. It was something liquidy and greenish. Hit the spinning fan, splashed down all over us, the walls, the board. The poor teacher got the worst rain down on his face. As a punishment, the entire class was made to clean the classroom. Surprisingly, we were not mad at him. We all had a real good laugh at it. Sharpened a pencil super sharp. Muzzle loaded it into the recorder, covered all the holes and blow gunned it at another kid. The pencil went between his eyeball and socket, so fortunately he kept his sight. Similarly, after I switched schools. This happened before I arrived, so I didn't actually see it. A girl used blue tack to stick a short and very sharp pencil on a kid's seat. He sat on it and it punctured the skin right next to his hole, then perforated his rectum. Needed emergency surgery. He didn't say much. But if asked, he would go to the front of the class and perform tiptoe through the tulips with all of the emotion and volume of Tiny Tim, holding nothing back. When the teacher told him to sit down, he screamed, "Frock you cow." Fast forward 2 years, he tells everyone he's a vampire and stabs my friend with a pen to try to make him bleed. He was weird like. One girl used to run, gallop around the playground on her own, pretending she was a horse. This is at too old an age for the rest of us to be doing this. Think 14-15s. She got a medicine degree and is doing her surgical training at the moment. I bumped into her in a hospital after over a decade. All I could think of to say was, "Do you still love horses?" She laughed and said she had her own horse now. Figures. Said absolutely nothing to anyone besides, "I like cows," for about a month. Anything you said to him, regardless of the context or situation, "I like cows." In elementary school I was the weird kid. I stacked all the chairs in my classroom like a pyramid. I got away with this because my school opened up early to let kids in. We were supposed to be in the cafeteria. I know my class was left unlocked. Not the first time I snuck out of the cafeteria to look around unsupervised and get away from other people. It took me about 45 minutes. Only like 15 kids in that class, so not a lot of chairs. I thought it was the funniest thing ever at the time. Everyone else did not. I still get a slight chuckle out of it. Still kind of weird. I actually stacked lots of different things and often in places or into shapes they probably shouldn't be. The list is endless, but one incident sticks out in my mind. The boy was getting told off by the teacher and instead of taking it on the chin, he decided to jump on the table, shout, "I'm out of here," and proceed to run full pelt into a steel beam that was supporting the roof. Knocked himself out cold. Was a fun lesson by all accounts. Bring a toaster and make tuna melts in computer class. He drove around the basketball courts, following the lines, on an imaginary bus. He'd stop to let people get on, off the bus and then drive them to their stops, and we walked in a line behind him. When he stopped walking, he'd mimic the door opening and closing and wouldn't let you on, off if you didn't wait for the signal. Salutations, Ben the bus driver. I hope you achieved your dreams. Edit. Wow, a lot of messages asking for more info. To clear it up, this was in Australia and he was between the ages of 8 to 13 when I knew him. We all got on the bus, because when no one did, he'd drive around looking sad. He did this all the time. Not once and not sporadically. Anytime he was outside, he was imitating a bus driver. He once asked me to play spies with him. Knowing he didn't play with many people, I said yes. He took me on a mission around the school. Before coming to a stop in front of bushes, pulling his pants all the way down and then started peeing in the bushes. At that point I was out. In 4th grade, one kid got so angry at something, maybe the work we were doing, he gripped his pencil as hard as he could, started yelling, moaning, and stuck the sharp end of the pencil square into his forehead. He brought a blow-up doll to our farewell dance, senior prom in the USA, as his date, complete with fishnets and everything. Edit. He was also wearing a kilt. We aren't from Scotland. You know how there's horse girls? This girl was obsessed with babies. Like being a mom or even acting like a baby. I already knew her as the weird girl. Then I got paired up with her for a semester as lab partners. Let me tell you, she was so much weirder than I thought. Constant questions about if I wanted to be a mom too and my body. She always had a pacifier with her, and would constantly chew or suck on it. She would switch between mommy days and baby days. Like one day she would come in and act like a mother, talk about her baby in extreme detail. Other days she would come in and just baby talk. It was so cringy. Things got significantly worse when she found out I was a babysitter. After that she became obsessed with me. This was in 96-97, so we had a bomb threat and all had to go to the football stadium. One of the special ed kids that had down started the Macarena and had the entire school going, and then this one kid that dressed weird ran out on the field with his friend in front of everyone and they started kissing. This was 96-97, so it started a huge mess. People were trying to beat him up and the administrators had to take them away. Meanwhile there were still some people trying to keep the Macarena alive. Was a strange day. Edit date asterisk had wrong date. Was my freshman year. Link for proof. Email number 4. There was a kid who used to eat erasers and growl at other kids. I dated the weird kid in high school and even a few years after, and the weirdest thing he did was try to date his cousin. While we were together, he also ate grass and him and his friends would talk about the flesh planet. I hated my life back then. A kid had a wank in the back of the classroom and thought it was funny, ejaculated on his desk. 14 or 15, it was like he discovered fire. The weird kid in my school, who was also a friend of mine, had really bad dry scalp during the winter months. He would vigorously rub his hair to get some relief from the itchiness and in the process would end up with lots of dead skin on his desk. One girl looked over as he was doing this and loudly said, "Ew," and he, wanting to make a statement, gathered up all the dead skin in a line-shaped pile and snorted it like it was a massive line of cocaine. He was kicked out of class. He always wore a cape to school, and if anyone ever talked to him about it he would be so upset because it's called a cloak, not a cape. One boy was once caught eating grass. When asked why, he said, "I always wanted to be a cow." I think he turned out fine, but it was weird. She blew her nose into her hand and then licked it while looking me in the eyes. She actually wasn't too weird aside from that. I have no idea WTF it was. I just turned to the noise and saw that. There was a girl that pretended to be a horse and make horse noises, and she also would draw pictures of all the guys' faces in detention with their bodies as half goat, horse with very detailed massive male genitalia. She was a really good artist. Lol. 3rd grade. Whipped his dig out while we were sitting on the mat. Did not say anything, just sat there as the teacher processed what was happening. Okay, so I had a kid at my school. Not particularly bad, but just annoyed the everything out of me. Because I was the only one nice to him, he would follow me everywhere. Randomly grab me for no reason, hug me and not give me any personal space. But here comes the worst part. We have school swimming lessons, and you could either get changed in the change rooms or the toilets, showers. Since I am a shy person, I would always use the showers to get changed. Figures he followed me in there, got dressed outside my door, and just when I was leaving my cubicle, he was just there, dancing naked. I died inside that day. In middle school there was this chick named Katie used to eat her panty strings in class. Like she would pull strings from the elastic part of them and eat it. There are two that come to my mind. It just so happens that they were also good friends with each other. The first one I remember chasing girls around the school with his penis out. This was when we were pre-teens. The second guy joined our class when we were early teens. And the two became best friends. One time, the teacher said something to the line of, "The back table, out," because they were annoying her. These two frocker decided to open the window and throw the table out. Edit. When I say pre-teen I mean around 8 or 9. In my native language you become a teenager at 11. I sometimes forget that in English it's 13 and up. Spoke Elvish. On a daily basis. On prank day, 3 of the weirdest kids in my high school stripped down to their boxers and greased themselves up and ran around for about an hour while the principals tried to tackle them. He kicked his best friend in the chest for making him spill his Mountain Dew. Ran out of the class and I guess attempted to leave school or something. A bunch of teachers chased him. I could hear running out in the halls and teachers asking where he went. The door to the class was closed but there was a window. Quite a bit later I look up and I see him at the little window and he just looks at us and licks the window and runs away again, and I see a couple teachers run after. He stabbed a friend's hand with a compass. Barely missed the vein. We were in middle school. He once had a tantrum and the teachers had to get all 29 kids out of the classroom to keep people safe from him. He also tried to give a guy that sat at the same table as me a wet willy in full view of the class and teacher. He was obsessed with Texas Chainsaw Massacre and said he'd shoot up the school if he could. We were vaguely afraid he'd go all Jason Voorhees on our asses. This was 10 to 15 years before Columbine, so no one took him seriously, and he never did come after everyone at summer camp or a reunion, so we're probably safe. There's a kid in my college, 16-18s in the UK, who walks around in all weather in a priest's cassock, holding a black walking cane with a skull on it. It turns out he has a problem with his knees, so needs a cane, and figured he may as well go all in. That one kid once went for a poop. He collected it in a bottle, put milk on it and went back into the classroom with his bottle of cocoa. He then proceeded to offer it to others, and to the teacher. He is a senior physician now. Being weird did not harm him. He got a sweatpants boner in science class. Some girl pointed it out to the whole class and he tried to choke her out. If someone bothered him, he would screech at them. It was indescribable. Ear-splittingly loud and shrill, like a sound that no animal makes. He called in a fake bomb threat because he was bored. The police showed up and cuffed him in front of the whole classroom. He was suspended for 2 months, during which he had to sit in an empty classroom being watched by the principal herself. He told me afterwards that she asked him all kinds of weird questions, like what poppers are and how they work. So I think the weird kid was out-weirded by the principal. Edit. I'll add another anecdote because people seem intrigued by the story. A day or so before the bomb threat, he showed the class his disgusting, moldy lunchbox that had been lying in his desk for weeks. When the cops arrested him, they searched his stuff including his desk. When they took out this lunchbox, the whole class burst out laughing. The cops were very confused. Had a kid who would take a piece of girl's hair and pick it off their head, then put it in a ring box and keep it for years. They weren't weird exactly, but there was a girl who used to pick earwax out and eat it, in class, during break, anytime she could get a finger near her ear really. We had a kid who liked to pretend he was an actual Jedi. I remember one time before gym class he was meditating in the locker room when one of the big football players started to yell at him that he wasn't a Jedi. He was unflinching. The saddest part, his last name was Bates, which it didn't take people long to call him Master Bates. I actually went to church with this kid in his senior year at a youth gathering. He admitted to everyone that he wasn't actually a Jedi. We were shocked. Edit. Senior year in the US is about 17 to 18 years old typically. Had a girl that Naruto ran through the halls and hissed at people if they looked at her. She gave me and my friend the death glare from her bus window one day with that finger across the throat. Death threat motion. IDK what we did to her. Planned world domination. He had a map with thorough plans on how to take down each country. This one kid wore cheap button-down collar shirts to school every day. And he would only ever button the top button and let the shirt billow around him when he walked. He would stated that he was convinced by doing this every day it would catch on and he'd start a trend in the school and be popular. He was forever alone on that hill lol. During my final exams I sat 2 seats in front and 2 seats to the side of the weird kid. I finished my paper with about 15 minutes to spare and absent-mindedly looked around the room. My eyes landed on him. He had a styrofoam cup sitting upside down on a pencil. Like the pencil was wearing a hat. He was hitting the cup so it spun on the pencil. Meanwhile, he was silently screaming at it. And slightly headbanging. I think his mind was at a silent heavy metal concert. Brought in shotgun shells and had a list? I had a kid that was caught jerking it twice under a desk in history. He would also sometimes eat a whole raw onion and punch me in the face when I asked him why. We also had a kid who was basically in a feud with a disabled kid a few years below us. Don't worry though, the disabled kid always won the confrontation because no one would let him get hurt and he normally outsmarted the weird kid. Very funny to watch. He carried a briefcase around and everyone was always weary of him. One day, my sister and I told him to open it. A crowd had started to form as he slowly opened the briefcase. Inside he carried a ventriloquist doll. It was super weird. When news broke of JFK's assassination, she ran through the halls of my middle school, flapping her arms like a bird, yelling, "Yay, the president's been shot! Yay, the president's been shot!" Impressively imitated the barking of a dog. Really sounded like a dog with a deep, fierce bark. Not like a middle school student. Edited 12 hours later. Thanks for the upvotes. I apologize if anyone was offended by my comment. Keep in mind that I am afraid of dogs. If you manage to sound exactly like a dog, then that will make me feel a little bit on edge. Though it shouldn't. He didn't do it in high school. But in law school, killed his classmate, dismembered her in the bathtub. Every now and then I see him get traction on here for not moving during the interrogation. Weird guy. Never thought he'd kill someone though. The guy that growled at everyone and seriously wouldn't speak to a single person no matter how nice. They eventually came to school one day dressed in all black and he's a huge chain like one for an anchor on a big boat-sized chain around his neck. Wore that for a while and we asked him why and he flung it off his neck and held it like a weapon and just went, "That's why." And that's the first time anyone heard him speak. Pretty sure he's actually a really cool person now that grew out of that sort of thing. This was in a later stage at college. But my classmate proudly told us he had a love relationship with his golden retriever, including 6, and he was the registrar of a bestiality website. Pipe. In 4th grade our class had a sleepover in school. We had a pool in our school and everyone went swimming. After that it was time to change. All kids just grabbed their clothes and went changing in the bathroom except one kid who decided to take off his swim trunks in the bathroom and walk butt naked in front of everyone, boys and girls, to one of the classrooms to change there in front all of us. Everyone saw him. It was like the walk of shame. They kept making fun of him and calling him names for weeks. Guy wanked off in class and flicked it at someone. Dropped a paperclip at the junction of the overhead projector and its extension cord. Big bang in the middle of grade 3. Kid used to stand underneath the stairs to look up girls' skirts. I wonder where he is now. Eesh. Broke the emo girl's makeup mirror and started cutting himself with it. One other kid stapled his hand and then ripped it out with his teeth. We had a kid with Asperger's. I believe. Throw a desk at someone. To be fair, the kid who had the desk thrown at him was a total douche. Edit. This seems like a common thing to answer a lot of people's questions. It was the 11th grade in an eastern US high school. Ours picked her nose and either ate it, chased you around threatening to wipe it, made hissing sounds when she was mad, that sort of sit. Edit. Seems like we all had a booger wiper, hisser at school. He'd pull out his own hair and use it to make leashes for flies. Well, I cut my finger in a mechanical pencil sharpener on a bet for $10 in 7th grade. Then junior year of high school I snorted a line of pollen in the courtyard outside of the cafeteria for $30. Miraculously, my severe pollen allergies have not been a problem since then. I guess I gave myself a vaccine. Edit. Wow, this is my most upvoted reply of all time. Thank you guys so much for making me feel like the man and not the weird kid. In junior high I saw a kid ingest the Jell-O cubes that came with his lunch through his nose. Just snorted them right up. I couldn't even look at Jell-O for a long time after that. Pair of creepy twins who would pick the gum off the bottom of the desks and eat it, attempt to hump the desks and coat pegs, and were obsessed with flashing people, teachers included. I was dared to drink Coke and eat Mentos in the school courtyard during lunch. I ended up puking right as the principal walked by. Definitely my proudest moment in all my years of school. Edit. Deleting because I made this comment without thinking and was a jerk for posting. Didn't say anything unkind, but it wasn't really kind to post. My friend used to pretend to be a vampire all the time for no reason. He would hiss when walking to class in the sun and talk in a Transylvanian accent. It was probably me. I ate an earthworm from the class garden for attention twice. Now a decade later I'm posting about it on Reddit for attention. I have to share this. It was too much. High school AP English and we're watching Romeo and Juliet, the 1968 version with Leonard Whiting and Olivia Hussey. If you've seen it, you might be thinking, wait, that has nudity, and you're right. It gets to the bedroom scene, and Romeo walks around for several minutes butt naked. Juliet rolls over and flashes the camera once. Here's where we get to. That weird kid, TWK. He leaps out of his seat in anger. This is bullshit. Teacher. Sit down. TWK. No, we watched his ass for 5 minutes. She's just going to flash a tit and that's it? Teacher. Sit down. TWK. I will not. This is outrageous. He shoves his desk and storms out. We didn't see him again for several days. More psycho than weird. But he was the only weird kid in our school. He was dating one of my friends and she couldn't cope with his neediness. So she dumped him. Important note. He's diabetic, needs insulin and had a whole little medical bag on him at all times. So he stood on a wall in the courtyard. And he broke his glass insulin thing on the floor, threw the rest in the bin and told my friend if he couldn't be with her he'd rather die. Didn't really see him much after that. In 6th grade, the weird kid in my class removed all the heads from her Bratz dolls and transformed them into what she thought looked like tribal shrunken heads. She presented one to her teacher on the last day of class for him to hang on his indoor miniature potted tree. It's still there. 15-something years later. Plot twist. The weird kid was me. Some kid used to lick his sandwich crumbs off the table, instead of doing the logical thing of sweeping said crumbs off the table and binning them. One day he contacted some sporty guys from my class and asked them if he could borrow their training shoes in order to lick them clean. He presented it as a kind of win-win situation, as he would get his kinky satisfaction and they would have clean shoes afterwards. Needless to say, no one took the offer. Other rumors say that he let himself get beaten up by 5th graders in exchange for money, but I don't have any proof to verify this actually happened. He walked around with a sheet of paper asking everyone if they liked him and took notes on their answers. Creeped everyone out. I was in kindergarten when this happened. It was show and tell day. And Marcel's turn arrived. He was a strange kid. Always doing weird shit and he freaked out all of us girls. Anyways, he gets in the middle of the CIRCL. All the rest of us seated cross-legged around him. And he whips his penis out and screams. Show and tell. and does a loop close-up of all of us before the teacher was able to get the situation under control. I just remember crying hysterically and explaining what I had seen to my mom at the end of the day. I'll never forget those words being shouted. Show and tell. Marcel, you dirty frock. I wonder whatever became of you. We didn't really have weird kids at my school. Oh sit. ... I brought a live chicken to show and tell and wore a clown wig for a week once. Oh yeah, and I had my own sign language that I used to curse people. Back in middle school, werewolf kid, the weird kid, asked to leave to use the bathroom during class. When he got back, he just sat back down and didn't say much. A few moments went by and people started making a scene because it smelled like someone had let out a really nasty fart. If only that were true. Turns out, while he was in the bathroom, werewolf kid took his own sit and rubbed it all over his shirt. The class was in an uproar. Teacher was freaking out too and started trying to remove him from the classroom. In the midst of all the commotion, werewolf kid took on his final form and began howling to the moon. I will never forget this day. Well, she started dating another, equally weird guy at the school. This was in middle school, so everyone was always super gossipy. But I remember that nobody really got on her case about it. She was picked on a lot, and they genuinely seemed happy together. A few weeks later, word got around that they were breaking up, not because of a disagreement but because she took him to a family gathering and found out that they were cousins. Of course, the girl was very open about this. For some reason, note that I said, they were breaking up. It took about another week or so before they actually cut it off. Yikes. This one kid with long greasy hair jerked off in biology class every day. I was honestly too innocent to realize at the time and retrospectively get weirded out. One time he kept saying, my best friend, peaches in a bowl, over and over again and didn't stop. He's probably still saying it 40 years later. Edit. The still saying it 40 years later comment was rude. The kid was definitely a special needs person. This one kid at my school had a super religious family, and he would consistently go around telling people that they would go to hell for the smallest things they did. Swearing, rolling their eyes, playing D&D, etc. His most quoted line is, I wish I was alive during the Crusades so that I could fight in the Lord's name. Edit. He actually ended up joining a D&D group in senior year, but insisted on calling all of the magic miracles, since magic was satanic. Took a dump in the swimming pool.